right. So we are live, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And we so appreciate you joining us because we know there are no classrooms right now. So you're all tuning in on YouTube or live with us here on Zoom. And as we continue to highlight scientists, explorers, and amazing places around the globe, we really appreciate you joining us. Today, we are finishing off, not just continuing, we are finishing off our epic SciComm Storytime series. It's kind of sad, but we got a really cool guy to end it off with. SciComm Storytime has been featuring people sharing the stories of how they got to where they are in life. Some really, really cool tales from people that do everything from fly into hurricanes to, study viruses going into brains and so much more. It's been a really, really fun month, all made possible by Emily Calandrelli, the Space Gal. So a huge thank you to her for making this happen. We are joined live, just off another gig talking to kids all the way in South Africa by Kevin J. Bruin. So the coolest two combination of things I can think of in the whole world are American Ninja Warrior and NASA rocket scientist. Now, Kevin combines these two. He's done a whole bunch of presentations with us in the past, and today he is going to share a little bit of his awesome story with us. So without further ado, thank you so much for joining us, Kevin, and take us away.
All right, thank you, Jesse. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Hey, how are you? Coming in from Los Angeles, here in my office, got my Saturn V rocket, my ISS, Mars poster, astronaut. There's space stuff all over here. So what I want to tell you about today is the story of how I got into NASA, how I became a NASA rocket scientist, and then tell you about what I was working on while I was there. Specifically going to be telling you about Europa. If you haven't heard about Europa, that is okay. I'm going to tell you all about it and more today. So I'm going to share my screen here because I've got some cool pictures and videos that I would like to share with you. So let me share here. Just make sure that it's coming up so we can all see. Got the thumbs up.
Perfect.
Fantastic. So what we got here. So what is this? So can you see my cursor? That's the first question I always like to ask. It's moving around.
Yeah.
Cool. This is NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. All right, so we got the mountains here. Here are all of the buildings that we are designing the spacecrafts that are going to Mars. Mars 2020, the Perseverance rover that's launching in July, was built and designed and tested in these buildings before it was shipped off to Cape Canaveral, and now it's getting tested in Florida. So this building here, this greenish, bluish looking one, is where I worked. Right in the middle, I didn't have one of these nice window offices, but this is where I designed my spacecrafts. So I'm a NASA rocket scientist, but this is the reason why. So I like to share this, right, as we're wondering what got us into space. How did I catch the space bug? Well, I caught it when I watched this movie, October Sky. So if you haven't heard about it, it's a true story based upon this guy here, Homer Hickam, and he wrote a book about it called Rocket Boys. So he saw Sputnik, that's the first satellite ever in space, go across the night sky, kind of looks like a moving star, and he just got inspired, started building rockets with his friends here, eventually wins a science fair, becomes a NASA engineer training astronauts at the end. I saw this when I was 10 years old, and I'm like, that's cool. Like, I want to design spaceships for NASA. So how did I make that happen? Well, first step was college. All right, so I graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Platteville with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. Now, it was when I was at Platteville that I got my first NASA internship, but it wasn't easy, right? So NASA has this website that has all of the different centers and directorates, because there's 18 of them around the country. All their internships are listed here, and you can apply for up to 50 a year. So I applied to 50 the first year, heard nothing back. 50 the second year, heard nothing back. 50 the third year, heard nothing back. And I'm in college getting a degree here and just not getting any sort of feedback or any jobs with NASA. So I'm just about to give up. And I'm like, I'm watching October Sky because I'm feeling sad. I need to get that inspiration back up again. And then I finally get one. I get a call from NASA's Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia, and I got an internship. So I'm working at NASA for 4 months, and I really figured out that I didn't have the right education or enough schooling to work at NASA as a full-time rocket scientist. So then I had to go on to grad school. So I went here, this is Georgia Tech, graduated from Georgia Tech, but it wasn't like I just applied to Georgia Tech and got in. It took me a long time. Like, I applied to Georgia Tech, and then I received an email from the dean of admissions saying, we regret to inform you that you have not been admitted into the school. And I'm like, this is like the only place I want to go, because it had a direct link with NASA. It had the only lab in the country that does what it does in terms of systems engineering or putting together these complex puzzles of a spacecraft. So emailing back and forth with the dean of admissions for about 3 weeks, and eventually he let me into the school and told me I had to pay my own way. So I was born in Wisconsin. I was living in Wisconsin. Georgia's out of state. So tuition was like $80,000 a year. And I'm like, how am I going to pay for this? And I'm like, all right, I'm not giving up. I called every single professor, emailed them, and eventually got a graduate research assistantship. So what that means is they paid for all of my school and then gave me a stipend of money to do research on top of that. So I'm like, awesome. So this ASDL you see in the bottom right, that's the Aerospace System Design Lab. And that's where I was working while at school. It's where we were designing space systems. And I was working with NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, designing the Europa Clipper, which is a spacecraft I'll tell you about in a little bit, while at school. So then it's like, okay, I'm going to graduate, right? And then I need to work at NASA, right? So here's a picture of me behind one of the Mars rovers, Spirit and Opportunity. These are the Mars exploration rovers. So I set my eyes on JPL and I'm like, I want to work there. What do I have to do? So I went through 3 rounds of interviews. The 3rd interview, they flew me out from Georgia, from school to Los Angeles here for an 8-hour interview where I was doing a presentation kind of like this to a panel of people. I was getting one-on-one interviews, them asking me questions, 1-on-2 interviews where there's 2 people like looking at me, asking me questions. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to survive this. I'll get through it and then I'll get the job. So it felt good. Went back to school. This was like January. I was graduating in May. I got the call from them in February saying, we regret to inform you that you don't have exactly what we're looking for this position. I'm like, that's my dream right there. And I just got told no. I'm like, okay, well, I'm 2 months away from graduation. About what can I do? So I was working with NASA JPL on the Europa Clipper mission. So I had a few friends there and they're like, well, you can graduate and we can get you an internship, which means I'm working there for 10 weeks and that's it. But I can use those 10 weeks to try and be hired as a full-time employee. I'm like, all right, done. So I graduated without a full-time job, went to work at NASA for those 10 weeks. So throughout those 10 weeks, I went and I knocked down 30 doors and set up an interview saying, hey, I'm Kevin. I want to work here full-time. Can we have a conversation? And it was at the last day of my internship before I had to move back in with my mom and figure stuff out that I was told that I was going to be hired as a full-time rocket scientist. And there we go. It made my dream come true. From 10 years old watching October Sky, over 150 applications before that first NASA internship. Georgia Tech said no and then paid me to go to school. JPL said no, and then they hired me to work on the most advanced missions they have, which is Europa, looking for aliens in our own solar system. So that story, like when I think about it and look back, I'm like, wow, like I had to fight to get here and it was a lot. Now I share this story not to say it's hard to get into NASA, right? Because some people have a lot more of a difficult time or a lot easier time. But my story I like to share because to show it's not impossible. I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin that was surrounded by beer, cheese, farm, and tractors. And when I said I want to work at NASA, people laughed at me. So I made it happen. So if you believe in something and you're willing to put in the time and the sacrifice, you can make it happen. Try and have a movie or a book or something you can go and watch when the times get hard. I've watched October Sky so many times when I was feeling like, getting rejected or these tests are hard. So made it happen. And that is the story. I wrote all about it. I made a book. It's called To NASA and Beyond. It's on Amazon and Audible if you're interested, but it just goes more into depth of the story I just told you. But okay, none of that stuff. What I'm doing right now is, so youtube.com/aplacecalledspace, where I'm teaching live space classes every Tuesday and Thursday right now at 9 a.m. Pacific time during the quarantine to help out with, homeschooling and distance learning. And then once the quarantine ends, hopefully in summer, I'm going to be having some 4 to 6 minute videos that are space topics as well, a little quicker, shorter than a half-hour space class that are coming up. But that's enough about me. I want to talk to you about space, right? So here's the cool stuff. So here's Europa. What's Europa? Have you ever heard of it? If not, here's our solar system. There's Jupiter, right? So Jupiter's got 79 confirmed moons right now. These are the 4 largest that Galileo found 410 years ago with a telescope. We got Europa. So Europa is about the size of our moon, but we believe has 2 to 3 times as much water as all of Earth. And we think it's the best place in our solar system to find aliens. All right, why? Aliens. Why is this the best place? It's way out at Jupiter, It's 5 times further away than it's from the sun. Doesn't look like it's got plants or like an atmosphere or anything. Well, so Europa. As life as we know it, these are the ingredients for life. You need water, chemistry, and energy. So you need a way to power life, right? That energy. So water, check that box. So Europa is like a big ball of water that's frozen on the outside. It's got an icy crust and then a liquid water ocean underneath it, then rock around like an iron core. So why does it have 2 to 3 times as much water as all of Earth? Well, on Earth, our oceans are an average of 3.5 to 4 kilometers deep, with the deepest point being the Challenger Deep in the Marianas Trench, around 11 kilometers. Now, Europa, we believe it's a 100-kilometer deep ocean on average, and that's what gives us the 2 to 3 times as much water as all of Earth. So it's got water, check that box. Now, chemistry, we need the building blocks of life, the things we find in rocks. So we need carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur, CHNOPS for the adults, schnapps, that's how I remember it. We need shops for life, and then energy. So we need a way to power life, right? Here, the sun on Earth gives light to the plants for photosynthesis. We eat the plants, animals eat the plants, we eat animals. I don't eat animals, but that's just how some people are able to create the energy for humans. Now, Europa, 5 times further away from the sun, sunlight can't penetrate that ice or the water. So what's happening? Well, the moons all push and pull on Europa, causes it to flex. So it got bigger and then smaller, bigger and then smaller. That creates friction or heat, right? And that can create that liquid water ocean. And that picture we see on the bottom is hydrothermal vents, or things that are on our own ocean floor, releasing salts and minerals into the ocean to create a rock and an ocean interface for a great area of life. And we find life in our own ocean floor down around that, those 8 to 12 kilometers deep in the ocean, where the sunlight can't get to, and they use chemosynthesis. So chemical energy, chemical chemo, instead of light photons, to do their energy. So we believe that that's happening out at Europa. So what we want to do is send a spacecraft out there to find that. So here's Europa Clipper, right? So here's the spacecraft that I was working on in college and with NASA that is going to launch in 2023 approximately, and it's going to orbit Jupiter and learn a whole lot about Europa. So what's that look like? So here on the left-hand side, this is the path of the spacecraft over 2.5 years. In the middle, we got Jupiter. Europa is orbiting around it, and we're orbiting Jupiter, but flying by Europa very quickly. And on the right-hand side, we see all of the places that we're flying over Europa during that time. Now, why don't we just orbit Jupiter? So let me play this again while I talk through it. So over the course of 2.5 years, we do this 45 flybys because Jupiter is giant, right? It's the biggest planet in our solar system. It's got a bunch of gravity, and it pulls in a lot of particles in space. It's got electrons, protons, things that aren't really good for spacecrafts. It's called radiation, the environment around Jupiter. It's like if you put metal in the microwave, don't do it because it's bad, right? There's sparks and it charges up. Well, that's kind of like Jupiter. It's like a giant microwave, and our spacecraft only wants to get so close to it shortly. So be close to it and then go up to our normal side of space, normal radiation, to then cool off and then come back in. So each time when we come through those 45 flybys, we want to hustle through and collect our science. So here's what it looks like. These colored bars turning on are different science instruments that we've given power to. So here we're taking pictures back and forth with the blue and the purple. Really high definition pictures of the surface to get a better look at it. We're studying the ice shell. So we have an ice penetrating radar trying to figure out how thick is that ice shell. Because if we want to get down into that ocean, how much do we have to melt through or dig through or saw through or drill? What is that? So we start about 66,000 kilometers out. We come in, this whole time is about 10 hours as we're hustling through close to Europa in that tough and radiation environment. And then as we're going through, close 25 kilometers is the closest we get to Europa. That's really, really close. So we got to be very careful. And then we come out at about 66,000 kilometers, we turn stuff off, and then it takes us 14 days to come back around. So we're at this point sending information over to Earth, recharging our solar panels, getting the spacecraft to cool down after that radiation environment to come back in and collect that science more. So potentially after that is a Europa Lander. Now, I don't think I have a picture in that one here. I'm gonna have to show you it in another one really quickly. Let's see, file open. we're gonna do this and new share. I got to show you the picture of the Europa lander because if not, you're not gonna know. So this is also what I was working on at NASA. It's not officially going to happen, but NASA asked us if we're going to land on the surface of Europa and look for those aliens, what would it look like? So we designed this thing, which is like a box that powers on batteries. That's got all of our important stuff in our box in our belly, an arm with a saw and a shovel. So you saw into the ice, scoop it up, put it in our belly, use a bunch of science instruments to look at it to see if we can find that carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur in the right combinations of molecules like water and methane to build our life. So it might happen, it might not. This is what it looks like. If we did go forward with this one, we'd launch in like 2028, land sometime in the early 2030s, see if we can find those signs of life. So maybe find aliens in the mid 2030s, maybe. How cool would that be? Like, that's amazing. So that's the stuff I was working on at JPL. That's the best place for life in our solar system is Europa. We'll send Clipper out there, then hopefully Lander, then we need a Lander 2.0, get through that ice, then we can use a submarine to go around in that water and find those aliens, or what I could call space fish. So that is my story of how I got into NASA and what I was working on while I was there. I know it's a bunch of information. I just wish I could talk to you about space all day long. So if you want to stay on here for another 4 hours, we could totally do that.
Let's do it. Okay, but I don't know, you might have some other school groups in there that you need to talk to. So we'll keep it shorter than that today. But Kevin, as always, like, your enthusiasm is contagious. The people's faces online with us, the comments on YouTube, you inspire people with your story and with this awesome tale of Europa. It's so very cool. So, okay. Let's give you a second to breathe because I know you did a whole talk and you've strained to a talk. Okay, we'll shake it off for a minute. We'll do some stretches, jumping jacks. Get ready. We'll talk about that in a minute too.
All right.
So we've got over 90 people watching on YouTube right now. Thank you so much. We got teachers from all over Canada and the States. We've got some live teachers with us, some live family. So what we're going to do is go into Q&A now, everyone. So for people on YouTube, let me know where you're joining from, and I'll share questions with Kevin, as many as we can. And for our live groups, I'm going to come to you guys one by one in the next few minutes, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to start with Miss Aldrich joining us in Morris, Illinois. Welcome in, Miss Aldrich. And if you have a question from your students or from yourself, take us away.
I do. I have a question from one of my students. You have an impressive story, by the way. That's very incredible. I love the perseverance. Fabulous. One of my students wanted to know what was the hardest part of getting to where you are today?
The hardest part of where I got to where I am today would be the continued rejection, right? Like not giving up. The thing that surprised me the most, I would say, which could probably be the hardest part, would be the getting into Georgia Tech. So I can understand with multiple internship applications, eventually like one can happen, and then continuing to try and interview at JPL, eventually I can get hired there. But then to reverse a decision of a no to a yes with Georgia Tech is like my most, like when I look back on it, like, holy moly, I did that. Like, that's crazy. And I think the hardest thing is to continue to push on, like through all of that, to make it happen. So for me, how that occurred was watching and reading October Sky and Rocket Boys to remember where I came from, and then having that support community. Like I had a roommate in college who knew like I was struggling, and he printed off a picture of a spacecraft and said, spacecrafts aren't built in a day, put it in my folder. I went to the library, opened up my stuff to start studying, and there was that photo. And I was like I'm getting chills just thinking about it. You know, the support crew that helps out, especially with my mom and my grandma as well, to help me push through all of those times. So you can't do it alone. So the most difficult part is you gotta have that support group to go with you. You're not solo.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kevin. All right, we're going to go to the Mellow Graydon family. So we got a bunch of kids joining there. Thanks so much for coming in today. Let me unmute your mic and you're good to go.
Thank you. So with the kids, we were just wondering how far and how long it would take to go to Europe, and do we have well, we talk about Michael, now we talk about Europa. So how long it would take us to get there, and if we were ready now, or how long it would take us to get ready?
Yeah.
All right, so how long will it take us to get to Europa, right? So let's say spacecraft's built, we're launching. So that depends, right? So I got two answers for you because we're still trying to figure that out. NASA's building a new rocket ship right now called the SLS, or the Space Launch System, that kind of looks like the Saturn V over here. That's what it's supposed to be like when it's done. If it's ready to go and we can use that to launch in 2027 or 2028, whenever it ends up being, 2.5 years, right? We can like put this thing in full throttle Ferrari mode and just shoot directly there. But if it's not ready, we need to build up enough speed. So one of our smaller rockets will take us to space, but then we need to steal gravity from Earth. So it's kind of like we call it a flyby or a gravity assist. If you've ever gone roller skating and someone grabs your hand and throws you, that's what it's like for a spacecraft when it comes around Earth, steals some of the gravity, and then it gets slingshot and shot with more velocity, more speed out to Jupiter. And that would take us 7 years because we got to build up the speed. So hopefully 2.5 with our Ferrari, but NASA's got to finish building that SLS first.
Awesome, very cool. We're doing the first launch from U.S. soil in May, I believe. Is that correct, Kevin? This was recently announced.
That is with SpaceX's Crew Dragon.
Yes, but SLS will be from the U.S. as well, like SLS will be the U.S. Like we're getting back to United States space launches, which is really exciting. So
yeah, because we haven't had that since 2011 when we retired our little space shuttle here.
I know. Well, awesome, very cool. I want to stress too for everyone at home. So Kevin's book, NASA and Beyond: Perseverance to Achieve the Impossible, on Amazon. So I've linked this into the YouTube chat bar, and I will link it into the chat bar for all the people here. Buy the book; it's super cool. I mean, we obviously got like a 15-minute quick primer of the story, but Kevin's story goes beyond that. It's really, really cool. I encourage you to pick up that book if you can. All right, let's go to Miss Mally's group representing a class in Milton, Ontario. Hi, Miss Mally.
Hi. Okay, I had a question from Tara, actually. Have you ever found any actual footage of weird matter in space?
Ooh. Have we ever found any actual footage of weird matter in space? So to answer that, yes, but then we understand it. So when we've had astronauts who look out the window and they see things like, oh my gosh, what is this? They take videos and some pictures. And a lot of the times it takes us some time to go through that data, analyze it, figure out what it is. Most of the time it's ice. It's ice that has broken off from the spacecraft and is floating out there, and now it's shining, it's reflecting, it's moving all weird because it's broken off the spacecraft and there's no gravity and it's spinning around. But if we're talking about finding aliens in space or an unknown craft, we do not have a solid piece of evidence that is accepted by all of, we have no idea what this is, and it's probably aliens. Not yet. Hopefully one day, but not yet.
We had a presentation the other day about Umwamu, like the interstellar object that passed through our solar system, which is super cool too. So get a chance to check that out. One of our passages, I forget who was talking about it, but very, very cool. All right, Skibinski family, let's come to you guys. And question, take us away.
Yeah, go. So when did you find out about this that you wanted to do, that you knew you wanted to be in NASA?
Yeah, fantastic.
The first, like the story I love to tell everybody is like watching October Sky when I was 10 years old. That's when I knew for sure that I wanted to be in NASA designing spaceships. So that was about 10 years old. But I remember before that I used to have these glow-in-the-dark stars that I would put on my ceiling, and I'd also put on my fan. So I do remember, like, my parents put me to bed, turn off the lights, I'd turn on the fan, and I'd have my own shooting stars in my room. And I just thought that was amazing. Like, it wasn't something that I can point to, like, I knew I wanted to be at NASA then, but it was like, space was always something special to me. Like, looking up at the stars, trying to just be in a different world, essentially, out of this world. But it was October Sky that was like, yeah, this is how you're going to do that.
Awesome. We have a bunch of teachers that have been saying that they want their classes to watch October Sky on YouTube, which is awesome. Those stars are amazing. I have those stars as a kid. We've had a lot of people mention those stars. You can still get these. So for families at home, little like glow in the dark, I think they're like phosphor dot stars. They're so cool. So check those out. By the way, Kevin, just want to note too, not only do we have a lot of families, we have some professional science people that are watching your talk. So one of our other speakers, Emily Calandrelli, is watching. Maynard, our hip hop MD. So you are a popular guy. All right, I want to pass along a question from Miss Yarwood, and she wants to know, what kind of protection and safety mechanisms do you have to protect the astronauts from effects of radiation? When people go to space, How do they protect themselves?
That's a very good question. So we have a couple of different ways of doing that. One way, what I have right here, we got some water, right? So water is a great protection against radiation. So radiation doesn't come through the water. There is a new company that they've designed like these suits. So think of it as like body armor or like Kevlar, like bulletproof vests for radiation that they're trying to figure out better ways to protect from. So different materials allow different amounts of radiation in. So the best materials that we have to protect from radiation is aluminum and, oh, it's escaping me. There is another one, I can't think of it off the top of my head right now, but when we design satellites and the spacecrafts for astronauts, we create bolts where we have the electronics in and we make them out of aluminum or this other material that's escaping me right now. That is, it's harder to form, but other ways, so protecting from radiation for astronauts, right? One way is to keep them closer to Earth, which is what we're doing with the International Space Station, only about 200 miles up or 400 kilometers. We're protected by Earth's magnetic field. Once we get out of that a little bit further on, we got the normal radiation of space. And that's why like trips to the moon and to Mars, the biggest thing we're looking at is protecting that human body from radiation. So we can use water to protect. We can use different materials such as aluminum. Also titanium and lead are good ways to protect as well, but they are a lot more expensive or heavy, right? So aluminum's cheaper. Tantalum, boom. Tantalum is the other material that we can use. It's tantalum and aluminum. Sometimes we do both of them to protect our spacecrafts. And I don't know if we've done that in human space flight, because my expertise is in robotic exploration. We use tantalum and aluminum to help protect our spacecrafts, and we go out that way.
Super cool.
Glad I remembered it right at the end.
You just proved you can persevere and become a NASA rocket scientist. You can persevere and think of that cool element thing. That's fantastic. All right, we're going to take a few more questions. Dr. Parshni Patel, one of our longtime speakers, she wanted to know, what is some advice you give to your younger self?
Advice I'd give to my younger self. That one would be, like, I like to say never give up. I know it's cliche, right? But like, it's worth it in the end, right? Because when I'm in there, I'm thinking back to college when I was trying to get an internship at NASA or trying to figure out calculus. I had to take pre-calc and calc twice, both of them, as I was going through. And at the time, it was like, is it worth it? Like all of these extra hours I'm putting in, like I'm not going out with my friends every single time they ask me. I'm studying, I'm trying to like figure out all my academics, my education first. It's worth it. That is what I would tell myself, is like those parties you didn't go to, or like those times where you chose to, instead of watch a movie, you know, read a book and to focus on your education to make that career happen, is it pays off in the end. And there's a lot of times where I just didn't think like it was worth it, right? I wanted to give up, but don't give up, because it will pay off eventually. Things take time. Like my friend said, the spacecraft wasn't built in a day. So just keep trucking.
Very cool. Thanks, Kevin. All right, we haven't got this question yet, and it's not one of the ones that's been asked on YouTube, so I want to share it. We've been talking about space this whole time, and obviously a huge part of your life. Fitness is another huge part of your life, as we can tell. You're jacked. So can you tell us a little bit about how that influences your work in other ways, how that makes you better at being a speaker, how that made you better as a NASA scientist? Share a little bit about fitness, how important it is.
That's a great question that I normally forget on, but it's so important. And I speak about it in the book, but people ask me like, how do you continue to work out every day, like when you're in grad school and like to become a NASA rocket scientist? Like, that's what allowed me to become a NASA rocket scientist. If I didn't do that, I wouldn't have the mental clarity, the focus. Like, it's the fitness that allowed me to return to my studies, to focus for long periods of time, to figure those problems out. I'd be in grad school, my code wouldn't work. And I'm sure many people can resonate with that. We're like, where's the error in my code? And I could sit at it and I could figure it out in 4 hours if I wanted to. Or after an hour of not being able to do it, take a break, go for a workout, go for a 20-minute run, come back. I will solve that problem in half of the amount of time it would have taken me, because I've reset. It allows me to think clearly. I'm more healthy. The neurons are firing. The blood's flowing. I'm able to focus and figure that out the right way. Now, how I got into it, right, was I was a soccer player in high school. I was MVP, team captain. I was being recruited by a couple colleges, but they didn't have engineering. So I turned down those offers to go to a school that had a good engineering program. Didn't make the team, Found out later it was due to like politics, whatever. Fell in love with the weight room, started to become a bodybuilder in college. I did men's physique competitions. So I'm on stage competing, looking cool. But I didn't feel like an athlete. Wanted to get back to using my body as a tool. So I'm like, okay, American Ninja Warrior. Like that's a challenge. Let's figure that out. So that's what I do now. I competed on season 9 and 10. And then season 11 and 12, I work with the show to design. Well, I don't design the new obstacles, but they'll call me up and be like, we've got this new thing. We want you to come test it. Is it too easy? Is it too hard? What do we want to change? So like a couple months ago, I was up at a warehouse. They had these things hanging 30 feet in the air on top of an airbag. And like, we want you to like throw yourself from one to the other. I'm like, what do you want me to do? So what I really love about American Ninja Warrior is the mental aspect of the game too. Right, I can combine my mental and my physical of this is a challenge. It's a puzzle, just like a spacecraft, figure out how to put it together. How do I complete this obstacle? There's many different ways to do it. What's the best for me? What are the different aspects? And then most of the times, I fail, I don't do it right. So I got to get up and do it again. So it's that mental challenge of continually failing to persevere to try to figure out what's the right way to do this obstacle. And it's so much fun. Like it's an adult jungle gym. I'm a kid, right? I got Legos in my office and I play on jungle gyms. I didn't grow up.
That's awesome, man. Here in Toronto, we have like a place called Pursuit Obstacle Course. I think a lot of major cities are starting to have these. Like it's exactly this. It's American Ninja Warrior for people that might not be able to do that off the bat, but it allows them to train, have fun, have a good time, and use their body as a tool, like you said. So fantastic, Kevin. All right, 2 last quick questions, man, and then we'll let you get to other presentations. So Maynard, our hip hop MD, he has always been doing tons of thoughtful questions all month long, and he wanted to ask if we ever do find life on Europa or another exoplanet, what do you think we should do with it? Any ethical considerations that we should have for intergalactic or interstellar life discoveries?
Fantastic, Maynard. I'm gonna have to text you after this and like thank you for asking this question. So I want to think about it a little bit, right? Because it's a big question. So we've seen that physics, geology, and chemistry work throughout the universe, but we haven't yet found biology off of the surface of Earth. Right? Like Kevin Hand, one of the project scientists for Europa Clipper and Europa Lander, he says this a lot. That's his phrase, so I've got to give him credit for it. And finding that biology, maybe a second Genesis, is amazing. Like we will learn we're not alone in the solar system. It helps us figure out really our place within the cosmos. So when we're looking for life at Europa, it's not advanced life, it's not intelligent civilizations, it's probably single cell microbes that we're looking for. And the ethical considerations that I think about that is leave it alone, right? Like, yes, we want to study it, right? But I think the best way to study it is to observe it in its natural habitat. Like, yeah, it's really tempting. And I think we probably will, if we find it, eventually bring samples back to Earth and study it. But I think it would be amazing to just do remote sensing, like observe it as much from afar and disrupt as little as possible to see where it goes. So there's going to be numerous ethical debates about that. Obviously, for the intense scientific information we can get by grabbing some of that sample and bringing it home, I'm in a moral debate torn too of, learning advancements in science versus respecting what's going on up there. It's kind of the same thing that we have with a little bit of the TMT, the 30-meter telescope that's trying to get put up in Hawaii on top of Mauna Kea. I was actually there about 3 years ago at the site, and there were protesters. So I don't have a feeling one way or the other. I want both. How do I have both?
Yeah, and this is a really good lesson. I think it's something that's valuable for all our people here and on YouTube, is this idea that science doesn't necessarily have all the answers. It doesn't necessarily have the prime consideration that we should be taking into account when we do these sort of discoveries. And it's a question that we've covered in a few sessions on this program, and everyone has different answers. It's a complicated topic that's going to require a lot of discussion and debate, including by members of the public that have never, seen a microscope or any of these things. So fantastic. I'm glad we got that. Thanks, Maynard. We're going to wrap up with a really hard one for you. It's an easy line, but it's a hard one to answer because you're so enthusiastic. From the Young family who's been joining us all month long, what is your favorite part of your job?
Seeing the light bulb of curiosity go on in somebody's eyes. Right. So now I'm a space educator. I've left NASA, and full time I teach people about outer space. And when I see someone's eyes light up a little bit, maybe the side of their lips go up with a little, it sparks the curiosity, the wonder, that excitement. That is the reason that I left NASA is to be able to implore that into other people and witness it and know that I'm making a difference out there.
What? Couldn't have had a better answer if you tried. Thank you so much for that, Kevin. That's awesome. I also want to note, you mentioning the 30-meter telescope. We have Miss Matsuda joining us from Hawaii, and she really appreciates you mentioning that in your talk. So thanks for that. We could talk all day. You said we could talk for 4 hours. We're not going to do that as much as we may want to. I've passed along a link to Kevin's website, to his book, and more, where you can learn more about all the stuff he's done, get inspired, get engaged, and get excited by space just like he is. So I do urge you to check that out. For now, Kevin, what we do at the end of every session, as you know with us, is I'm going to demute everyone's microphone. So our families joining us today and our teachers, if you guys could join me in saying a big thank you to Kevin for joining us in LA today, go for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
you.
So much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Again, over 90 people on YouTube that whole time, which is awesome. We really appreciate you tuning in. We know it's weird being stuck at home, but when there's talks like Kevin's today, it makes it a little bit better for all of us. Kevin, thanks so much again, man. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks, you too.
All right. Bye for now, everyone. See you all soon.